Welcome everybody to Dharma Punx Seattle. We've been chonking through the 10 parami, the 10 factors of enlightenment, and this week we are covering the fourth, which is wisdom. This is maybe one of my favored topics, I guess, in Buddhism. And the definition is probably similar to any definition of Buddhism, where I feel like a lot of the definitions can be a little bit different, but one of the things that is applicable is that it's not, wisdom isn't really honored in our society or in our culture. Intellect, however, is. And so being able to differentiate the difference of intellect versus wisdom can be a really important distinction when we're developing our practice in Buddhism, because they are very different. And so, you know, in our society, we have this sort of exalted position toward thinking. You know, I think we talk about great, you know, the great minds of, you know, whatever. And in Buddhism, that's, you know, there's a place for study and for intellect, but wisdom often carries a higher merit, and that you know, our intellect and our thinking, our pondering is actually, especially in the West, probably one of our biggest problems. You know, so many of our mind diseases are thinking problems. So beginning to develop wisdom can be a strong antidote to this habit that we've built into constantly relying on the intellect and the thinking. You know, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, talks about intellectualization being a common cognitive distortion that's used. There's like tons of cognitive distortions. Intellectualization is one of them, and I can remember in my own therapy looking at intellectualization and having such a fucking hard time really understanding what that meant. And so I would intellectualize about intellectualization. And it's taken me a long time to undo this habit that has been sort of imposed on me, not necessarily by you know, my own fault, but that's just, again, sort of what is exalted. You know, we praise, you know, philosophers and academia, and there, like I said, there's a place for that, but it's not the same as wisdom. So a common phrase that we can think of in our culture is like grandmother's wisdom, right? It's not grandmother's intellect, grandmother's great mind. It's wisdom. And why do we turn to grandmother's wisdom? It's because of her experience. It's because of her direct experience and the life that she has lived, that she has something to offer that, you know, me, myself, as, you know, whatever age I am, probably don't have and don't know. And so to define wisdom more concretely, it is knowing directly the truth. And, you know, similarly, it would be like if one was to read a recipe book and just close it. Right? You know, so this is where we can begin to split that hair, is being able to, okay, I've studied, you know, I've listened to the Dharma talks, I've studied Buddhism, I've read the books, but now I'm going to go out and actually bake the cake, right? And vice versa. Like, we can't necessarily, I'm not trying to dismiss the intellect or anything like that either, because it would be stupidity to just be like, well, they say just go do wisdom, and like, I'm just gonna bake a cake, and I've never read a recipe about cake in my entire life, and I'm just gonna, like, it is both of these things coming together, but it can't be the book alone. You know, I can think of how many books I have read. You know, at this point, I'm in a graduate program. If I could have like retained every single fucking thing I've ever read in my entire life, if that just like, you know, can you imagine if you like read how to do a kickflip and just could do it? The wisdom is going out and practicing it and knowing for yourself what it takes to actually achieve a kickflip. So that is the introduction on wisdom. The question I have today is, can you recall a time when you thought you were being wise, but realized later you were delusional? And this is a common experience that we have when trying to set that intention of developing wisdom and becoming aware that, oh, like there is a wise mind that I can listen to that occasionally has correct things to say. And that discernment of, oh, fuck, I listened to the wrong voice. I thought for sure that was wise mind, but that was some delusional ass shit. So talk a little bit about that. And, you know, if you want to reflect on, you know, even how, if you have a sense of how do you know, if you have a sense, how do you know that this is wise mind coming in? Talk about that too. And then if anybody is tuning in via YouTube, you can journal or just meditate on the topic. All right. Yeah, groups of 3 should be good. Yeah, I think Ryan will come back, so. So we'll meditate for about 30 minutes. Finding a comfortable way to sit. Bringing attention to the body. Relaxing any muscles that might be tense in the face, around the eyes, the jaw, shoulders, softening the belly. The spine like a string pulled taut. And drawing the lumbar in. Finding the breath, noticing the breath. And that's going all of the time, but seldomly we ever pay that close attention. And just noticing the quality, the energy, is it shallow or deep? Is there a desire, a craving for it to be a certain way? An aversion that it was different? And you don't have to change anything when you notice these things. Just observing its quality. Your meditation can be like taking the temperature of the pool of the day. Today it's scalding hot. Today it's neutral. It's lukewarm. And that's what we're doing. We don't need it to be any other way than the way it is. Right now it's like this. You can begin noting directly either staying with the breath or labeling the thoughts that begin to arise. The feeling tone. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And as you're noting, resisting the craving to expound and write an entire essay about why something is pleasant or unpleasant. And for now, just being able to note, this is pleasant. I want it. I would like it. I crave it. Or, this is unpleasant. I dislike it. I don't want it. I hate it. Or neutral. Resisting the urge to expound any further. Perhaps seeing our addicted tendency to thinking like it's not useful or meaningful to just know if something's pleasant or unpleasant without a rationalization. If you're uncertain whether something is pleasant or unpleasant, just see if you can let it go for now. You won't forget. Begin noticing the quality of awareness itself. As you are becoming aware and labeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, does the mind feel expansive? Like you're watching from a movie theater screen? Or does it give the sense of looking through a small microscope or something different altogether? And much like the breath, this is simply taking the temperature of the water. You don't need to, if awareness feels small or tight, there's no need to try and make it big and grand, or likewise in the opposite direction. Begin reflecting on the impersonal nature of thought. In this meditation alone, you've had probably dozens, if not hundreds, of different thoughts whiz by. How many of those thoughts did you decide to think? Or did they seem to just arise on their own? How many of the thoughts today did you think intentionally? This is the insight of the impersonal nature, the Buddha's idea of not self, anatta. And much like we don't always have a good temperature of how we're breathing throughout the day, maybe we can identify specific thoughts, but maybe we don't necessarily remember. We forget that we didn't think these thoughts. Many of them, anyway. Just because there is no self to distinguish, this doesn't mean that we should forgo the quality of care. And so for the last several minutes of this meditation, finding loving kindness phrases that feel good to you, dropping it into this awareness that you've created, like a dye of food coloring and water. You could use the following phrases or any phrases that you personally like. I love you. I've always loved you. I will always love you. Coloring this quality of awareness with kindness, a gentleness. I love you. I've always loved you. I will always love you. When the bell rings, allow your eyes to open and gently come back into the room. Just random, when y'all were having your discussion, I went to the bathroom and a thought arose. Maybe y'all are familiar with the Jackass song, "If you're gonna be dumb, you gotta be tough." And I don't know why, I was like, this talk just kind of reminded me of just like that whole concept. I think it could be maybe even applied in both ways. Like, if you're gonna stick with delusion, you better be tough. So, so wisdom is similar to the talk I did a couple weeks ago on sila, or morality, where that one has branches that branch into the Eightfold Path, and wisdom similarly has these branches, and it branches into right understanding and right intention, or wise intention, wise understanding. And so, again, I kind of just bring these to the forefront. Maybe it's not super useful in your day-to-day life to think like of these lists in a very intellectual kind of way, but I find in my own, when I am in that mode of study and I am in that own mode of listening to Dharma talks, being able to remember that these, what these things, how these things connect can be really useful. And especially with wisdom and, sort of the way that I feel like I talk about in so many of the talks that I give, the way that our own perceptions and beliefs come into things, it can be nice to have, a sort of subset of information to draw upon in case we start to get more confused about what is wisdom. If we start to become confused on how to apply it, how to develop it. So starting with wise understanding, the Buddha said that wise understanding is the forerunner to well-being. It's the first on the Eightfold Path for, do I want to say for a reason? Yeah, I think so. That it is sort of the precursor to the rest of the path. It is, in fact, kind of just like the first step that we take, which is, in fact, actually that more intellectual side of wisdom, right? That sometimes that either comes from actual study, listening to Dharma talks, reading the books, and sometimes that comes from just our daily lives, the trial and error of data. I know that a lot of my own practice, was lots of trial and error. Like, I had a period of time where I'm just like, I'm gonna just go date a bunch and go learn some shit. And I developed a lot of wisdom from that because it was a very action-oriented thing, and it gave me a lot of data to pull upon, so that way the next time I could be like, okay, I have this information now that I didn't have before. And so similarly with, with right understanding, it's being able to discern what causes suffering, where it ends, and that's pretty much it. The Four Noble Truths. I think often in my own practice, right understanding means something a lot bigger. It means like being able to write dissertations and essays about a topic. And when we're approaching understanding, we're approaching it from this direction of, do I know where the suffering starts? And often I think I know where the suffering starts, but if I'm still suffering about it, then I probably don't. And I should try to understand further the beginning of the suffering, so that way it has an ending. So in this way, that could be one of the other metaphors I've used in the past to talk about right understanding is it's the blueprints to the house, right? So here's your map, here's your recipe book, here's your blueprints, and that's where right intention comes in, the other factor of wisdom. Other translations that have come later from other monastics have been right motivation or wise motivation or wise aspiration, which I like that, aspiration, because it tells me that I don't have to have it necessarily right now, that it's something that I can try to work toward and aspire to, that maybe I have this understanding, but I'm trying, wise trying. And this is where we build the house, where we bake the cake. We have the information. How many times have you read a book and you're like, great book, and never listen to anything that the book said? And so that's a practice that I've really attempted to take in the past couple of years, is being able to, especially if I'm reading something self-helpy or Buddhist-y, is being able to maybe read it slow, reading something and being okay, cool, I read something, this is new information for me, let's go give this a try, let's give this recipe a shot. How do I try this? Otherwise, like most things, I will forget. It's the problem is that we forget things until we know them, until we've developed the wisdom. I think I wrote this little quote down here that I like, that's about delusion specifically. It is, what is delusion? Not understanding as it actually is. This suffering, this is the origin, this is the cessation, this is the path. This is delusion. And so one of the aspects of right understanding is being able to also see greed, hatred, and delusion in all of its forms. And I think that we give a lot of credit to greed, craving, wanting, desiring. We give a lot of credit to aversion, hating on shit, disliking things, wanting it to go away. We don't talk about the delusion one all that much. That's one that kind of, I feel like is gets less showtime. And so that quote of what is delusion, it's just the not understanding. It's that experience of, thinking, like we talked about in the discussion, thinking that oh yeah, this is the wise shit, I'm gonna do it. And it in fact being not, right? That being the invert to wisdom is the delusion. That when we're not understanding things properly. Or on the flip side of it, maybe we have some level of understanding. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a phone call with somebody and they're just pontificating on a subject, and it's just cool. It's a great thought. What are you gonna do? Good shit, good thinks. Those are incredible things. What are you gonna do? And so that's another piece of where our delusion can play out, is that belief of like, okay, cool, like I've pontificated about the matter. We are done here. And, I think just reflecting on our own lives, on my own life, how many times have I used that strategy and it worked? How many times have I sat there and pontificated for minutes or hours and felt really relieved at the end of it? Very seldomly. Very seldomly. And so that's one of the maybe understated parts of wisdom, is that it really asks us to be in the present, because that's where wisdom happens. It doesn't happen in the future. It doesn't happen in the past. It happens in real time, like in the moment. And typically the only way thinking happens is if we're in the future or in the past. There is a huge ask for us to just meet our experience. And much like the meditation, maybe not diagnose what it is, how it is. I mean, like I said, sometimes there is use for that, but often being able to just take the temperature of like, oh, okay, this one's spicy. Okay, we got spicy today. What do we do with spicy? Rather than making it personal about us, about it being some sort of, inherent wrongness. When I was reflecting on this before the talk today, I was hanging out with a friend the other day, and I kept referring to my thought, or I was recounting a lot of things because we hadn't hung out in a while. So I was like, I like, that was really stupid of me, or that was like actions or thoughts. And she's a person who's like very particular with words. And so although I didn't necessarily mean it like I'm stupid, like I felt like I had to keep explaining to her that like, no, like this is why I thought it was stupid. And I think that can be like an important thing when we're talking about the delusion aspect. It's like, it's just stupidity. It's just stupidity happening in real time. It's not that you're stupid. It's just that was stupid. And that personal aspect, because that's one of the things that also robs us of and helps create that delusion force field, is when we make it personal. And being able to relax, let go of the I, me situation, and just being like, oh, stupidity is here. I showcase that regularly. Developing wisdom can be difficult. It asks us, I think, in a big way, to run toward fear. Because if we're just in either in delusion is one reason why we're not developing wisdom. We just literally have not tried to understand it well enough. Or there's that other version of like, okay, I've got the understanding, I actually have the understanding, but I'm too afraid to do that like right aspiration, to like send that quality of momentum forward. And one of my favorite analogies, some of y'all know the local monastic Ajahn Nisapo. He gives this really beautiful analogy story. He talks about, or he tells the story that one time he was giving a Dharma talk, and that when to understand suffering, we have to run up toward it and put our hands on it. And someone in the crowd was like, "Oh, it's like telephone poles." And I was like, Can you explain why is it like telephone poles? And so the person, I guess, used to, I don't know what that job is called, work with telephone poles. And they said, yeah. So if a telephone pole is falling, what do you do? Do you run? Or, like that would be my instinct, is to run. But in fact, if a telephone pole is falling, you ought to run toward it and put your hands on it, so that way you can know which way it's going to fall. And so I feel like wisdom is a little bit like that. That sometimes it feels really counterinstinctual because of our makeup, because of our trauma. We're often trying to go against some really powerful forces of fear. But every time we succumb to that fear, we're taking that gamble of being smacked on the head with a telephone pole. And I feel like it happens more often than not. And so the encouragement that when there is this quality of fear happening, is to remind to have that reminder that when we run towards it, we have that opportunity to develop some wisdom. And similarly, if we have our hands on it, we're beginning to understand the telephone pole. We can sort of have a sense of, okay, step left, step right. If we're running away from it, we have no idea where to run because it's behind us, right? We can't see turn left, turn right. So being able to be close to that pain and to surpass the additional suffering. Another analogy that I really appreciate, it's more on the attachment side, because I think that we get really comfortable in our little like houses of horror. We find like, this is good enough. Like, why do I need more? And Ajahn Chah was famous for giving this analogy of the dung beetle, where we are the dung beetle. And that the shit is our cravings and our fears and our attachments and all of that shit, but we like cling to it. And you could like take that little dung beetle and like go put it in like fucking jasmine essential oils or whatever, and it would be like, fuck, hate this, and it would find its way back to the shit. I love that little analogy that he gives. And so, respecting too that this is not our fault, that this is just something that takes time. Developing wisdom is, again, it's not teenagers' wisdom. It's grandmother's wisdom. That comes with time. And so giving ourselves the grace that developing wisdom can be messy, and that sometimes we know we're in, the pile of shit and we're loving it, but like still trying to move forward despite that. So I think that is all I have today. Any questions? Any just comments? Anything that you would like to talk about in the larger group? What's that?
Always me.
Yeah.
Asking questions.
I heard Ajahn Brahm gave this talk a while ago, and apparently I've never read this sutta, but apparently somewhere in the suttas it says that if you ask questions, you get a more beautiful rebirth. So keep them coming.
I was literally sitting here waiting for you to finish that. I already knew my mind was like, yeah, what's the story about the idiot who asked all these questions?
No, actually the opposite.
You say from time to time, I was reflecting on this or that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious what your experience is of a reflection that separates it from a thinking, a ruminating, a sort of experience of not wisdom.
Yeah.
What is that like?
That's a good question.
It seems to be essential as a skill.
Yeah. So that is a component of the right or wise understanding, is that we do have to occasionally engage the thinking mind to discover, to understand. And so really trying to keep it in that framework of, is this developing something wise? Is this a reflection that, I'm engaging the thinking mind in a purposeful, intentional way to, create a Dharma talk, or, to plan out my day, or to figure out, how I'm going to talk to my partner about something that was difficult, versus, I think that it's really hard to sort of split that hair, because I think in my own practice before, a lot of my reflecting had a lot to do with me becoming better and not just addressing a issue that was current and that I needed to just figure out how to resolve in that moment, if that makes sense. It would be unwise of me to come in here with no plan, right? So often there can be a maturity of the practice where it stops becoming this thought of I need to become better and I'm going to think my way into becoming better. It's kind of a hard split, but do you feel like that answers the question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I can, because some of my worst thinking comes out of this sort of oh, I'm in pain and I want this to change right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start thinking about it. And there's not even a conscious awareness of that. Intention is only kind of in retrospect where oh, that's probably what I was trying to do before I was ruminating for 6 hours about this past thing, was I was actually in pain and didn't want to be anymore. But there was still an intention. It wasn't really a conscious intention, and it wasn't really trying to solve. It wasn't really from wisdom to begin with.
Right. I mean, and you named it. It was an aversion to pain.
Yeah.
And then that's where that right understanding, if we had the wise understanding in the moment, to just say like, pain happening, like we're gonna just sit with it. You know, I'm actually averse to this pain and I want to get rid of it. And so I'm going to think my way into becoming a better person now.
Great. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I have another thing that I'd like to share.
Yes.
Fun sort of thing I realized kind of recently, and I don't know if people do this, notice this, or have done it for a long time, and I'm just like slow to the party, but it occurred to me in being aware of my thoughts in like mindful meditation, that something I'm kind of seduced by is when a thought starts and I go, thinking, and then I go, but let's just like finish that thought and then I'll go back to mindfulness. Like I know I caught it, and I'm like, but it's through the sentence, right? It's through the sentence, and I'm like, thinking, but yeah, what was the end of that? And I realized that there's absolutely no benefit. There's no real relief or pleasure or satisfaction from letting the thing finish, the thought finish out. But it seems like there must be. It's like I feel like I'm cutting someone off in the middle of a sentence, and that's rude. So like let them finish. But it's only recently with this experimentation where I'm like, I don't even need to finish that thought because I know it has no value at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do feel like meditation can be like that over time, where it feels like, you know, the proportion of like it being like unsubstantive popcorn thought versus substantive, like I actually need to sit with this one, like that proportion, that ratio gets like smaller and smaller, of like, more thoughts are becoming, popcorn thoughts.
Yeah, you're slowly becoming like, all these thoughts are just kind of like calories or whatever. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of them really seem like, ooh, here's the answer I've been looking for, but then it never is.
Love it. Do you have something, Johnny? Yeah.
For some reason, I'm having a hard time thinking delusion is just not understanding. Like, it just seems like it's way more like,
Way more.
Yeah, it feels just way more heavy than just, I don't understand.
Wrong understanding.
Yeah.
You're like, I do know what I'm talking about. I'm certain it's this one.
Usually when I'm thinking of delusion, it's usually, so I'm being judgmental towards somebody else, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, it's just the way I'm processing it right now.
No, I think that's a really great point. You know, I definitely feel like in our culture, it's one thing to, I feel like all of the translation words that are used for that one, I don't remember the Pali term, but it's ignorance is another one, delusion. And I feel like we only like use those words in like the worst case scenarios of like, that person's fucking delusional, ignorant.
I like confusion.
Confusion, that's a good one. And so maybe sometimes like I realized sort of in exploring this topic, I like stupid. That's been like a favorite word of mine since I was really little. It's just a common word that I use all of the time. So being able to, because you're right, you know, it does have this kind of extra like judgment with it, and that's not what it's intended to be. It's intended to be more just, you're not seeing clearly, you know? There's no evil in it, just clouded vision. I think, you know, it's like,
That's just conditioning then probably too, not mixed in with it, yeah, it makes sense.
words.
It kind of goes back to that value of, in our culture, of intelligence over all other things.
Right.
we equate that to greatness.
Mm-hmm.
So to call somebody stupid is like the ultimate insult.
That's a good point too.
Or anything stupid adjacent, like you call somebody ignorant, like that's damnable.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Like, open ourselves up to that. That's
Yeah.
scary.
Like
What
I
if
can
I'm
be
stupid.
Yeah.
Deranged.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, I don't know, like explore, find maybe a word that's more suitable to you. I think for me, stupid, it's been a favorite word of mine since I was a little kid. Like to the point where like I had a friend when I was little, like call me out and be like, you can't keep calling me stupid. And I was like, I don't mean it like that. It's just shit's stupid. But yeah, like that impersonal aspect of it, right? Like this isn't my stupidity. I'm not stupid. Just stupid is happening. Delusion is happening. Ignorance is happening. There's not bad people. There's ignorant people. There's stupid people. Acting stupid, maybe I should say. Acting stupid.
Currently deluded.
Currently in a deluded state. Yes. Deluded.
DILUT.
That's a good one.
I like suffering from confusion.
Yeah.
Afflicted.
Afflicted. Afflicted. Yeah.
It's not their fault, they're afflicted. Well, I've been just right now.
All right. We should probably cap it there. But thank you all for a lively discussion. I much appreciate it. We have some books up here. If you have not grabbed one, feel free. They came from the monastery by Giri. This one, The Breakthrough by Ajahn Amaro, you could consider that being Grandpa Dharma Punx, so you can explore some of his teachings. And Donna, if you have anything to contribute, it's an important part of our practice, generosity. $5 to $10 suggested donation. If you have less, give less. If you have more, give more. But ultimately, this is freely offered, so if you don't have anything, it's no problem. And with that, we will dedicate the merit. You can put your hands together in Anjali if you would like. No pressure, you do not have to do that. May any merit that was gathered here today, any goodness, any beauty that was created today, be spread above and below, to the seen and the unseen, to those being born and to those who are dying. Bye, YouTube. Yeah, good.